Greetings and salutations, all of you imagination connoisseurs out there. Welcome to the Post-Geek Singularity community and Robservations number 154. My God, I don't even need to be wearing glasses right now. I don't even know why I was. I apologize for that. So welcome today, this Tuesday. It's an amazing day, isn't it? It's just an amazing day. I don't know why. It just is. So I wanted to say welcome to this. I can't believe we've done 154 of these shows. I can't believe, and we keep building this community. And again, I keep hearing from you. Got some really good letters today. You guys keep sending me these amazing letters. We're building this community. I'm getting letters from people I don't know that have sent me letters for the first time. I got a letter from Lynn over in Japan. Very excited with all the letters we have today. I want to clear up a few things. First of all, remember that this podcast is brought to you by Lucky Tiger Men's Grooming Products. For those men who want to look good and feel great, you can go to getluckytiger.com and look at their products. They're all good. Again, it makes me want to grow a beard or a mustache so I can use more of them. But if you want to check out their products, I highly recommend them. You know I use them myself. And if you use PGS when you check out for Post-Geek Singularity, you get 20% off. They're also running their summer sweepstakes. I thought it was over, but it's not. It's going on until Friday. And if you go to clubluckytiger.com, you can enter their summer sweepstakes and win free stuff, which is great. One thing I want to clear up. Yesterday, I talked about the fact that I'm starting these new broadcasts. In addition to these live chats, I'm going to do a broadcast a day, I think, during the week, which are going to be themed. And on Friday, it's going to be a viewer's choice where somebody who supports the channel at the $3 a month tier, so $9 for the quarter or above. The confusion came. People are like, well, do I have to downgrade my pledge or something? No. If you support the channel at the $3 a quarter tier, so $9 every 3 months, you can put in your topics. And what I want you to do is suggest a topic and some of your reasons for suggesting the topic and why, what you were thinking of. And I'm probably going to create a video package. This is going to require some, I can't just sit down and talk for these things. I'm going to have to actually do prep. And I'm really looking forward to that. And one thing that you might add is, would you be interested in coming on the show? If you're going to suggest a topic and you support the channel, I'd love to have you on. A lot of people, such as like Willow Yang, has said she's painfully shy and really doesn't want to come on the show, and that's fine. She sends me letters and all that, but I would love to have her on the show. I just want to know what her voice sounds like. But so anybody who wants to do that, tell me. If, I don't want to cause you any stress. You don't have to come on the show. As I'm saying, if you want to suggest a topic, please do so. And I would love to use your topic and create a video package. And that's going to be on Fridays, probably starting in July. July 1st is what next? It's Monday, a week from yesterday. And then Comic-Con's coming. So maybe July, the beginning of July is not the best time to start it, but I don't know when that will be. But big changes coming to the channel, only because I think the key to this channel is all of the goodwill that we're generating from everybody and this community, and I want to keep that going. So I think making this channel much more participatory is definitely the way to go. We must evolve like V'ger in Star Trek: The Motion Picture. This first letter that I got, actually, some people sent me in super chats first, didn't they? And somebody wants me to give a big shout out to friends of theirs. And who am I to say no to that? Let's start off the top with the James Eversole Jr. Movie Podcast. Says to me, my good friend is opening his new comic book shop this weekend. Can you give a shout out to Comic Relief and my dude Jacob Fudge on the new opening? Huge fan. Thanks, Rob. Well, the James Eversole Movie Jr. Podcast. Let me just talk about my great friend John Schnepp, who I did Heroes with, Collider Heroes with for 3.5 years. John Schnepp loved nothing more than a great comic book store, and he would have loved to know that your good friend Jacob Fudge was opening his new comic book store, Comic Relief. I don't know where this comic book store is because you didn't say, but wherever Jacob is, wherever Mr. Fudge is, wherever his comic book store is, Comic Relief, let me just say that I, Robert Meyer Burnett, strongly suggest you hit this grand opening, buy a few graphic novels, buy some comics, buy action figures. I don't know what's going to be in this comic book store, but I love comic book stores too. So congratulations to Jacob, and congratulations to the staff of Comic Relief. It's great to open a new comic book store in this day and age. So congratulations. And the James Eversole Jr. Movie Podcast also says, for Quentin Tarantino's 10th film, I would love to see him team with the legend Daniel Day-Lewis. What do you think of this combo? Well, Daniel Day-Lewis says he's retired, but since the 10th film from Quentin Tarantino is supposedly the film he's retiring on too, what a team up that would be. I love Daniel Day-Lewis. The man is amazing. He's a treasure. I'd watch him in anything, so that sounds good to me. Robert Perez says, do you remember Time Bandits? Dude, I went and saw Time Bandits at an advanced screening when it first opened in, I want to say, 1981. I love Time Bandits. I own the Blu-ray. It's been a favorite of mine, well, since I first saw it. Gotta love it. Factual Opinion is here. Also says, the Attack on Titan anime is making his jaw drop. Attack on Titan is quite the anime. I'm a big fan of it. I have it on Blu-ray in the next room, believe it or not. So I'm a fan. Absolutely a fan. So that's just right off the top from people. So thanks for those. This first letter came from somebody who's written me before, but I thought it was very interesting. And once again, it weighs in on the topic of The Last Jedi and Kathleen Kennedy, something that no one seems to have an opinion about. So allow me to just jump right in. This one comes from CJ Dunn, longtime viewer, longtime member of the Post-Geek Singularity community. Well, within the last 6 months, since that's as long as it's existed. So let's kick this Robservations number 154 off the show about something with CJ Dunn's letter. Strap in, boys and girls and aliens and non-binary people, or whoever you are, however you identify, the first letter of the day. Dear Rob, the last videos of late have been weighing heavily upon me. I know I like to diverge topics a bit and like to talk to you about topics that not everyone agrees or submits about anime or sci-fi other than Star Trek and Star Wars. Today, I'm going to let something off my chest and weigh in on a topic that seems to be popular on your show, or at least a recurring topic, to say the least. But before I do, I must warn you that this letter may be quite lengthy. Also, like everyone else on your show, I feel the need to present my accolades as everyone else does. Not because I'm boasting or anything, but because it can give other viewers a gauge of where I stand as a human being and where my life experiences can be a factor. By the way, I very much appreciate that when people write in and give me a little background on themselves, for the very reason that CJ stated. First and foremost, I am a geek of the Post-Geek Singularity. I am also a member of the Armed Forces. I have served in the Army faithfully for 15 years. I have seen a collective of 39 months in combat, starting back in 2005. I have seen and experienced different cultures with a very open mind and met some outstanding people from all walks of life that have the same desires as us first worlders do. That being said, I'm going to bring the problematic topic up of Kathleen Kennedy and Star Wars: The Last Jedi. I say problematic because it is a very divisive topic amongst fans. I am far from a diehard fan of Star Wars or Star Trek for that matter. I only indulge in it because my father, one of the greatest human beings in my humble opinion on the face of the earth, is a huge fan of the content. After all, he is one of the influences of my love for sci-fi and geek culture, not just the topic at hand. My father did enjoy The Last Jedi. And coming from a very far-right conservative view of the world, derivative of the great state of North Carolina, my father never claimed that there ever seemed to be an agenda or social justice underlying plot in the movie. As a matter of fact, most far-right conservatives I know, which I call most of my family, never even mention that in their digestion of Star Wars: The Last Jedi. My father, my mentor, separates his fiction from his reality. In fact, he insists on it. No matter what he sees on TV or movies, he views it as a separate work of art. He also sees it as an escape from reality. He just tries to enjoy his science fiction as just that, fiction. I say all of that to say this. Given my life experiences, I try and do the same. I am currently pursuing a bachelor's in art and animation. I understand that there are influences in art from current pop culture and social nuances, and that being said, they shouldn't deter someone's ingestion of art or entertainment. I've seen every Star Wars movie. I have my favorites and I have my not so favorite. That being said, I didn't particularly like The Last Jedi, but I didn't get hung up on some social justice warrior agenda either. There were just things about the movie that didn't quite appeal to me. However, the things that didn't quite appeal to me didn't detract from my enjoyment of what was good about the film either. As I've stated before, I'm in the Army, and one of my many duties in the Army is I am an equal opportunity leader, an EOL. I am trained to see the forest through the trees. I'm trained to weed out racism, sexism, ethnicity, sexual preference, etc., any kind of ism. I'm trained to understand where it comes from, what influences it, and talk to teach soldiers about it. I come at it with an open mind, and I try and teach soldiers how to do the same. I say all that to say this. I still did not see a social justice warrior agenda in The Last Jedi. I reference the Army and my experience in it, yet again, to say that I am in the profession that places blame on the heads of people in charge. And I can see Kathleen Kennedy's situation from both sides. I just don't understand why she's getting so much hate or passionate hatred. I love this. Fan hatred is hatred. Hatred sounds cool. I like that. My hatred burns hotter than your hatred. That's not in the letter. I like this letter, or this word. In my humble opinion, everyone can have their own opinion. But to take it out on just one person because they did not like something is, no offense, spoiled first world BS. Enjoy the content or don't. Don't berate someone because you didn't like it. Also, if you think there is some hidden social justice warrior agenda in something and it's a problem for you, it's only because you have a problem yourself. I have zero problem with a woman being in charge and kicking ass. The hotter the better is what I say. I was groomed in the Army where women still didn't have a place in combat arms jobs when I came in. And combat arms is where I've maintained my stay in my 15 years. Just a few years ago, women were allowed in combat arms, and they are doing outstanding. Not a social justice warrior agenda there either. Just not enough men or people who claim they are manly joining and being a part of something more than their agenda or themselves. So, enjoy fictional content for what it is, fiction, an escape from reality. I know I do. Keep your heads up, Post-Geek Singularity members. Enjoy the enjoyable and take what you can when you can and enjoy the F out of it. It could be worse. We could not have all of this awesome geeky stuff to enjoy at all and just be left with, well, nothing. Thanks for all you do, Rob. P.S. I do not mean this in an insulting way toward anyone. In fact, it's the complete opposite. I just want everyone to be better people and be better towards one another. Thanks, CJ. Well, CJ, what a great letter. I wanted to showcase this letter up front because it's always interesting for me to be honest. I mean, my professional career has been over the last 30 years primarily concerned with the entertainment business. And I've been lucky enough and fortunate enough to work with a lot of great and talented people who, as I've said before, one of the great things about making films is it's sort of a microcosm of humanity. And you get to meet all different kinds of people working on movie sets because movie sets require many different avocations in order to run. For instance, part of your camera team, not only do you have to know how to run cameras, but you're also working directly with the grip and electric department and grips and gaffers, and they're setting up your lights and they're designing things, but they also have to know electronics and they have to know power supplies and they have to know all kinds of different things. And what's great is you have all these different hair and makeup people, the art department. It's a great cross section of people that you work with. So I've always found working on movies to be quite uplifting and illuminating. And what's great is there's not a lot of time for people. You're just around people that are good at their jobs. And in a way, and this might seem a little strange, but I've always thought working on movie sets was kind of like working on a starship, where you're kind of dealing with the best of the best, especially on studio projects. There's a reason people have the jobs they have. They're really good at their jobs. And there's something that I was telling Vlad, Elizabeth's brother, this morning that I kind of wanted to share with you. Is this letter reminded me of that. One of the things I love about movie sets. So I've said this often, but I'm going to do a little calculation here. I'm going to calculate some time. One of the things that people don't understand about movies is movies are literally one of the only professions where you can calculate exactly how much a second of time is worth. And how you do that is you have to figure, say you're working on a major studio movie, and you can actually figure out how much a 12-hour day, which is a standard work day on a movie set, it's a 12-hour work day, how much every second costs. So as an example, let's just say on this movie, every day, and you're shooting a 5-day work week, not 6 days, but as many independent films do. Let's say we're just shooting a 5-day week. And let's say, for the sake of argument, that each shooting day, to pay everybody, to pay whatever the bills are, to pay the employees, the camera rentals, whatever, that each shoot day costs $100,000. I'm going to put that in my calculation here, $100,000. So we got 100 grand, $100,000 is our day. Now there's 12 hours. So you're going to divide $100,000 by 12. So every hour that you work on this movie, your $100,000 shoot day, every hour costs $8,333.33. So 833, pardon me, $8,333.33. That's how much every hour of your shoot day costs. All right. Now let's break that down. There's 60 minutes in an hour, right? So let's divide that 8,333 by 60. So that means that every minute on your shoot costs $138.88. Every minute. Every minute. Imagine if every minute of your life cost you $138.88. Let's divide that by 60. 60 seconds in a minute. $2.31. That's how much a movie costs to make. Our $100,000 a day shoot. Many movies shoot for months at a time. Independent movies shoot for sometimes 20, 25 days. So you're looking at every second costs $2 plus. Imagine that. $2 a second. So you can imagine when you're burning money at that rate, anybody who works on a movie set and doesn't pull their weight, doesn't do their job, you're out of there. And I think, the military probably burns money even faster than that. But what you need is the best people in their jobs. So the idea that people who are incompetent, that are working at the highest levels of the film business, especially, nobody understands how much money is worth to a movie production more than Kathleen Kennedy does. So that's one of the reasons that I find it objectionable that people are always going off on her. No, she's not a creative producer. Look, a great producer does all of these things. I had my friend Adrian Iscaria say to me that the difference between a creative producer, and this drives me crazy, a creative producer and a line producer. In Hollywood, there's this difference. Like, a line producer is a nuts and bolts producer who's there all day long making those calls. But a line producer can also be a tremendously creative producer. But everybody in Hollywood wants to delineate, well, a line producer / producer is the boots on the ground guy that's producing movies. I think a great producer is both. A great producer, a real producer, knows how to make a film and also knows how to develop a movie. And it's sure, there are producers that specialize in being a line producer, nuts and bolts of making your day. But then there are also producers that are both. They spend a lot of time cultivating material with creatives, and then they also are boots on the ground producers. Now, a lot of the time, it's true, creative producers and those people that aren't part of the nuts and bolts on the day-to-day production. There is a delineation, but I just think that it's really important to remember that in Hollywood, with that amount of money, $2 a second at risk every single day that you're shooting a movie. That's only pre-production and production is only 66% of your budget, as I've told you on the show before. 33% don't, and by the way, don't, if you filmmakers out there are going to say, no, you only need 20. 33% of your budget goes to post. 33%. I know if you want to make movies and you think, oh, we can do it for 20. No, you can't. You're wrong. 33%. But what about shoot? No. Don't tell me no. Don't tell me wait. 33% of your budget goes to post. Just saying. But $2 a second. Imagine if you had to lead your life, and every second that you led your life, you had to pay $2 a second to exist. That gets racked up pretty quickly. But anyway, it's interesting to hear. I don't even know where I was going with this. I'm so out in the weeds. To be honest with you, I don't even know what my point was. I'm going to get back to CJ's letter. The point is that he is a man who identifies himself, says right away he's in the U.S. military, been a combat veteran, been around for 15 years. And not only has he seen months worth of combat, but now he's also, I mean, what did he call this? Which is really interesting because this is the first time I've heard of this. He called himself an equal opportunity leader. I didn't realize the military had equal opportunity leaders, but I think it's great. And as he says, he's trained to see the forest through the trees. And that resonated with me a lot. I think that fandom has forgotten to see the forest through the trees. And I think we need to get back to the fact, look, I'm not saying you have to like everything. I certainly don't love everything. And the agendas of why things are made. Star Wars is now being made for one reason and one reason only: to make lots and lots of money for its parent corporation. Now, Star Wars used to be made. It was the brainchild of one man who hoped it would make him a lot of money, but that's not why he did it in the first place. Filmmakers, like any other artist, are compelled to make their art first. I mean, sure, you always want to make money so you can sustain yourself and you can live in the lap of luxury, of course, but nobody is out there making movies. They're just too damn hard. There's much easier ways, believe me, of making money. And every movie you make is a crapshoot. Getting into real estate, even getting into day trading is easier than making films, especially in this day and age. So I like this idea. I like the idea of being an equal opportunity leader, especially in the military. It's nice to know they're so forward thinking. But I like this letter because the point was well taken. CJ's conservative father, right wing, he said, far right father, would rather consider fiction and can enjoy it for its own sake. And, you know, I've worked in a lot of different aspects of the motion picture industry, television as well. And I've never agenda-based storytelling, which is sort of all the rage at the moment. It never works. It just doesn't. You can't push an agenda. An agenda, if you're pushing your agenda, your story takes a back seat and you will always fail if that's what you're trying to do. The difference now is there's a lot more voices jumping into the fray. We're going to be getting a lot more opinions, a lot more points of view, and that's only a great thing. We're just in a period of we're shaking it all out right now. It's an evolutionary period, as I've said many times before on this show, and we're changing it up. You know, all these new voices, they want to make themselves heard, so that's their primary concern right now. But eventually, great storytelling will win out, even at the corporate level, because bad storytelling fails there too. And ultimately, if they don't tell us great Star Wars stories, they're only going to make money for so long, and it will snap back and things will change. But no one's out there trying to foist an agenda on people. They're trying to make money. That's the agenda. And why people think that isn't is beyond me. But anyway, CJ, I want to thank you for that letter. I thought it was really good. I enjoyed it, and I liked hearing from our men and women in uniform because, again, they bring a perspective we don't normally have. I mean, I certainly, even though I've worked on projects with members of the military directly, like my crisis medicine project I did, the lecture series I did with Dr. Mike Schertz, who's also for 18 Delta, that was a great experience, but it's always great to get different points of view. And one of the things that this letter also I enjoyed about it was, once again, I'm hearing diverse opinions from people I don't normally hear from, and they feel comfortable enough to share them in this community. And I give that up to you guys who are here, you members of the Post-Geek Singularity community. You are the ones that are being most welcome. You out there in the live chat and the people that are commenting and people that are supporting the channel. You make all of this happen. So kudos to you guys. I think it's really cool because otherwise this channel wouldn't be nearly what it is and what I hope it will become. This next letter comes from Mark Scarbeck. Hi, Rob. Thanks for the recommendation of Chernobyl. So good. Also, I started watching Star Trek Discovery this past weekend, and I'm not really a fan. At first, I couldn't even get through the first episode. Then I went back, and now I'm on like the 8th episode. At first, I thought it was the fact that they like to overuse the term number one when talking to the first officer. Personally, I think it should stay a Picard thing, but oh well. Some of the stories are somewhat intriguing, but then I find myself losing interest. Maybe it's the douche characters, as you so elegantly put it. Since I'm almost done with the first season, should I continue to watch the rest of the season and the second, or just wait for the Picard series? Thank you, Mark. Well, you know what? I was always one of these guys, Mark, I'm going to tell you. When I was a script reader, when I was reading screenplays for a living, you could tell if a screenplay was good. Some people would say you needed 10 pages, 5 pages. I would dare say it got to the point where I could tell if a script was going to be good on page 1. But I had this weird thing. When somebody wrote a script, I wanted to know what happened. So I usually would diligently read it to the end. I mean, obviously I'd have to do coverage on it, but usually you could figure out, you could read a script halfway through or 3/4 of the way through and guess the ending. But I like to read a script all the way through because I would always give the author, the screenwriter, the benefit of the doubt. Usually that was misplaced. But like I've always said, of the over 3,000 scripts I read professionally, I said yes to one. And if you haven't heard me tell that story, because I've told it so many times, it was the script for Seven by Andy Kevin Walker. That was the only script I ever read that I said yes to. But I would say, Mark, you should go to the end of Star Trek Discovery, unless you truly hate it and it's truly agonizing to watch. Here's Gilbert, everybody. Gilbert is here. Does Gilbert want a cookie? See, Gilbert and Tallulah want cookies. I don't know. They've come up and they want cookies. And you know me, when we're live, I can't deny them. But you've had cookies already. So I'm going to give these animals, they each get a cookie. Okay? These dogs, man, I'm telling you, they're going to 1,000 cuts of cuteness with the two of them. No, you don't get to, no. All right. So there they go. Anyway, I think, Mark, you should make up your own mind. Unless you really hate Star Trek, that goes for all of you. Depending on what it is you like. I'm always of the opinion that if it's in a pop culture zeitgeist, I try and watch it because, for the next 6 months, you're going to get op-ed pieces, you're going to get reviews, you're going to get people talking about it. And as far as pop culture is concerned, or the entertainment industry, I consider myself a student of it all. So it's important to be up on those things. And yes, even though I've fallen behind on my film going, it's important, Gilbert, don't be a mooch. It's important that you stay up on those things. And I think it's important to watch, to experience things, so at least you have a valid opinion on them. And if they truly are awful, the more informed you are about just how awful they are, the better off I think you will be. This is another letter from Down Under, and it comes from Aaron Brown, who you remember, his partner's name is Shasta. So this comes from Aaron. Hello, Rob. Thank you once again for reading my letter. I thoroughly enjoyed hearing a reply to my account of the life and times of myself and Shasta and the jive we have going on. He says jive. I especially enjoying learning of your experience here with being exposed to Cold Chisel by the locals. Certainly, they are considered a national treasure by many, and indeed, they have written a litany of great songs. I can only imagine the reactions of the Aussies at you having no idea who they were. This made me laugh. I'd never heard of Cold Chisel, but that's like saying you haven't heard of, I don't know, Aerosmith if you were here. Maybe not Aerosmith, but another band of that ilk. Whilst still holding on yesterday's topic, I appreciate hearing the Australian music and films that you've most enjoyed. You've definitely given me titles to look into with the films, so let me return the favor. Whilst I feel the Australian film industry is quite tiny and stunted, there have been some gems that you may not have heard of. Wolf Creek, which I have seen Wolf Creek, is a horror thriller that I think you would appreciate. As so too Chopper. I loved Chopper. The pseudo biopic starring Eric Bana, Romper Stomper with the great Russell Crowe is probably considered a classic, featuring a young Russell Crowe. He's a New Zealander, but Australians tend to take selective ownership of New Zealand things we rate and claim them as our own. The Castle is another recommendation. Whilst not a Criterion type film in an Oscar discussion, it is a great example of quintessential Australian larkin humor. So too is Kenny or Crackerjack. A couple of other great recommendations are Jindabyne, starring Laura Linney, and Latana with Jeffrey Rush. I've not seen Jindabyne. I haven't heard of Jindabyne, but I've seen the others. I've seen The Castle, which I liked. I actually seen Romper Stomper and Chopper. As a matter of fact, Chopper and Romper Stomper kind of make a good double bill in a way. Coming back to your response, Wolfmother is indeed an Australian band, and if you like them, I implore you to check out some other great Australian rock. Artists that are considered classics here now, like the Angels, Icehouse, Hunters and Collectors, the Hoodoo Gurus, Nick Cave and the Bad Seeds, the Screaming Jets, and Powderfinger all join the conversation with the likes of Midnight Oil. I know all of those bands and have listened to all of those bands except Powderfinger. I don't have any Powderfinger. For something more contemporary, I'd suggest bands like Carnival, Krog, or 12-Foot Ninja. I like all those names. It would be remiss of me not to bring to your attention the Perth-based outfit Voyager, who are indeed named after the Star Trek series of the same name. Both the band and the series are a favorite of mine, by the way. And if you're feeling particularly adventurous, hybrid death metal with injections of classical and folk stylings from Melbourne, Ne Obliscaris are something to give a spin. Ne Obliscaris. On to today's topic. I've noticed that on both your show and on the John Campy show that the topic of the fandom menace, and by association toxic fandom, has been a frequent hot button issue. With one of today's letters, I found the assessment of the fandom, the people therein, and the effects of the apparent social justice warriors on social media to be particularly engaging. Through my social circle, I'm often confronted with news of someone being unplatformed or unpersoned by these sorts of groups because of a belief they hold or an opinion they have voiced. I believe we live in a dangerous era of human evolution, as it seems that society is so volatile toward any difference of opinion or rhetoric to that of any given particular sect that they set to completely quash and silence that voice from being heard or echoed. I find that personally I'm often at odds with these events, as in most debates I can see both sides of any given argument, but I just don't understand the vehement friction and resistance that is increasingly present from factions on any given topic. Numerous friends of mine are involved gamers. I'm much more of a casual gamer, though I do have quite a passion for gaming and have done so for many years. I'm not fully abreast of the ins and outs of Comicsgate and everything going on around that, but I know if asked the question in conversation with my friends, I'd be drawn into the deep dive of that whole hornet's nest. Needless to say, I'm reluctant to go headlong down that rabbit hole. However, when another gate was in full swing, Gamergate, I did take notice of the toxic actions that were taking place on both sides of the fence. Now, I won't go into how much of the fiasco seemed to initially, at any rate, be concerned with the validity and reputability of gaming journalism and how many journalists were outed as being bought to provide positive reviews. We've seen in all forms of journalism and the contribution that has had to the decline of the professional nature of that industry. What I was amazed with the most out of the whole shitfest that Gamergate turned out to be was how any valid argument or debate quickly devolved into that of a sexist or otherwise prejudiced attack. Now, I'll be the first to tell you that I have a pretty poor opinion on the likes of Anita Sarkeesian. For anyone to outright come out publicly stating that the opposite sex should be killed is in the very least abhorrent. Add to that, she and others use their platforms to influence others and raise funds under false pretenses, all whilst spewing hate and making up heavily skewed viewpoints to incite rage and retaliation when there was no basis for it in the first place. But even with this sort of behavior being exhibited by a public figure with some level of influence, the behavior and recourse of the other side of the debate did themselves no favors with their actions either. There would often be call-outs for violent attacks and just petty recourse to the apparent slights, and of course the constant mudslinging. I fear this behavior is only getting worse, and any student of history knows that sort of thing we're experiencing globally are frighteningly similar, albeit in a modern context, to that of Europe in the 20s and 30s. I shouldn't have to highlight how that turned out. The sort of behavior exhibited in Gamergate can be seen in other groups around the globe also. The whole Antifa movement proves themselves to be just as questionable as the very kind of people they vocally claim to despise. Here in Australia, we have had similar acts of violence between groups, with the far-right groups like Patriot Blue or the Loyal Nationalists staging violent protests to immigration with neo-Nazi propaganda. It seems like the extremes in our culture are becoming more extreme, with more of a divide between them, and there is very little rationale happening with any debate. In addition to geek culture, though, I've never understood the inherent sexism that seems to exist in fan communities. As you pointed out, Rob, we've always had strong female characters in geek culture. I've been a huge fan of Princess Leia since I was a very young child. She was probably very likely my first crush or something close to that nature, and I love that she was a feisty, take no prisoners kind of girl. That probably well informed my taste in female partners to this day. My appreciation for the badass women of geek culture didn't stop there. The likes of Ellen Ripley in the Alien series, Captain Janeway in Star Trek Voyager, or Xena the Warrior Princess, just to name a few. I certainly grew up appreciating all kinds of women on a number of different levels from a young age, so I'm always dumbfounded by the present hatred towards them from a section of the male contingent within greater fandom. I'm aware of the term incel that gets thrown about, but I feel that just a narrow sort of net that it I'm aware of the term incel that gets thrown around, but I feel that just a narrow sort of net that the social justice crowd have thrown that really only encompasses a small percentage of the sexes in question and only highlights one motive of what is a much larger and far more broad issue. Certainly, I've met males that have issues with women stemming from their lack of success in romantic endeavors with the opposite sex, but I fail to believe that this encompasses all of the chauvinists, bigots, or what have you. As I've come across numerous people that have been married or in relationships with women in spite of their apparent disdain for the fair sex, no, there's something bigger behind this, and I don't have the answer. You make the valid point that we as white males have been atop the pyramid for a long time. This is definitely one factor to take into account with the outlook of society right now. As the Emperor Palpatine alluded to, those in power only fear losing that power, and of course, that is where we are as a society in many ways. A shift of the status quo of power. The outrage and ire caused by some comments from Brie Larson about middle-aged white men reviewers or members of the film industry highlighted this perfectly. For me, her comments were valid, though the countless articles and posts that appear in my feeds on how she apparently hated all men and needed to be boycotted in the wake of all this, all of which was untrue, spoke volumes about where we're at as a society right now. Nobody seems to listen to or take in the whole story. A fraction is taken in and amplified like the Chinese whispers, and then the inevitable witch hunt is on. The James Gunn controversy recently, too, highlights the same sort of issue. Did he say questionable things? Yes. However, they were meant in jest at the time, and they were some 8 years or so in the past by the time they were raised as an issue. However, the lynch mob was out to completely ruin his life because he said something they didn't like. It's insanity, and it really makes me wonder how far we've got to go before something so terrible happens like this to make the world at large say, that's enough, no more of this nonsense. I think myself lucky at times that I'm not in a position of fame, as I'm notorious with those that know me for saying things that tend to put people off or upset them. It's not always intentional. I just tend to tell it as I see it, without much of a filter, if any. I tend to think that I would have been accosted numerous times in spectacular career-ending fashion for my opinions had been prominent, if my opinions had been prominent in the public eye. As far as fandom is concerned, I've never been able to understand why the collective isn't more like what we experience here with the Post-Geek Singularity community, in that we can openly discuss and debate all manner of things without it devolving into a cesspit of childish name-calling. I'm aware that moderators help greatly in this. I've always felt that it should be a cause for people to get along in their shared interests of things, rather than just acting as a platform to spew vitriol from. In closing, I have to say that whilst the internet has provided the world with a means of being more connected and informed than ever before, with everything you can think of in a reach, in many ways it has seemingly also generated the opposite effect. We can communicate across the globe instantaneously at the touch of our fingertips. You would think, if you were just informed of this advent, the global society would be closer, more informed, and more than before. I would argue, in fact, that this has in its way created the greater divide. More people with more opinions who have grown accustomed to the nature of instant gratification and instant action, coupled with the content fed to them sculpted by their own interests and outlooks, further fostering insular viewpoints and isolation, has all culminated in the radical nature of exclusion that we are experiencing. Any outside viewpoint is seen as foreign and hostile, leading to outrage, and the response is instantaneous. If something comes from outside the cultivated bubble, it needs to be eliminated. Without knowing it, a whole generation of people are being shepherded into this sort of behavior. There are, of course, people in positions of power that know of these key contributing factors. The masters of the algorithms, with their latest recording as ever vigilant surveillance, know exactly how much of an effect they're having on society and its impulses. It's worth noting, even if you feel at this point our tinfoil hats should be firmly on tight by now, that the likes of Mark Zuckerberg, when he appeared on the stand in court last year, visibly had both the microphone input and the webcam lens of his laptop taped over because he knows what is happening. In a time when nations are moving to close their borders ever tighter, despite us apparently being more connected than ever, it does make you wonder, in the words of Axl Rose on Sweet Child of Mine, where do we go now? It's true. Aaron B., thank you for that letter. That's a great letter. And, again, here's why I wanted to read Aaron's letter in its entirety. I know, but it went with CJ's letter too. Today I had an experience. I was taking a lift back from John Campia's house, and I had my driver was Jamaican and really outgoing, really nice guy. And he came from Los Angeles, from Miami, and he's originally from Jamaica. And, he talks with a Jamaican accent, but he was very obviously, clearly, very, very smart dude. And he was talking passionately about what he was studying, and what he was studying was music production. And he's interested in both reggae and dance music, and of course, hip hop and pop. But what he told me was really interesting. I started talking to him about movies, and he was telling me that one of his favorite movies of all time is The Matrix. And I said, The Matrix is 20 years old this year, and he couldn't believe that. But he was telling me about how he taught himself how to play the piano. And then he played me a track that he had created, and it was full of, he said to me, that you can get beats and you can buy beats, or you can download other people's beats and use them for his music. And he didn't like that. He wanted to create his own beats. So he taught himself the piano, and he did so with YouTube tutorials. And he started telling me about, in his Jamaican accent, which wasn't that thick, but it was, I love the Jamaican accent. But he was saying that there's that, what is it, Malcolm Gladwell, or who said that you need to, in order to be an expert at something, you have to have done it for 10,000 hours. And he brought that up, and he said, I would say I've probably played the piano for 100 hours, but I've gotten pretty good at it. And he used YouTube tutorials, and he said it took him about a month, but he taught himself how to play the piano. And then he started playing me beats that he had created. And he actually, a very cool sort of Ibiza chill out. Like, I'm a huge techno. I love techno music and EDM. And I would buy all the chill out collections, the Ibiza collections. I have many, many, many CDs full of all of that. Any European compilation of techno, I'll buy and listen to. And it had a vibe like that, the track he was playing me, but he had beautiful piano that he not only was playing it and it sounded normal, but he was also explaining how he would put like this underwater effect on it. And it was a great track. I mean, I was like, man, I would buy, if I heard this track in a chill out bar or someplace and heard this at sunset, I'm like, I'd have to get this album. And what struck me about listening to him talk and his experience, he came to study specifically music production in Los Angeles. He moved from Miami to study music production, and he was so passionate and into what he was doing. And then the fruits of his labor, his actual talent on display, was immense. Now, I'm not saying everybody's going to have this talent, but what was so great about talking to him was he was doing something. He was talking to me about how great the internet was because he used YouTube tutorials and taught himself how to play the piano. And it took him a month. And I asked him things like, well, would you play along with tutorials? And he said, no, I would have to watch tutorials for days on end first before I sat down to the piano. But the thing is, this guy was motivated. He was on it. He was outgoing. He was clearly very, very talented, especially when I heard his music. And I think that I've often said that all of the vitriol in fandom is coming because all fandom, we've all wanted to reach out and meet other people. But I've always believed, and I used to get dinged for this when Mark Allman, I would always say to Mark, I'm like, we are obligated. I think we're obligated as fans to try and create the same kind of things that we've loved, add to the tapestry of all of the, whether it's comics, whether it's video games, whether it's movies, whether it's television, whether it's novels, whatever it is, whatever you're into, that if it's in within you, you should look. When you're making something, when you're passionate about creating something, the act of creation of any kind, it doesn't matter what it is. You could write poetry or be writing in a diary. If you're a creative force, that means you're not just feeding off of other people's input. And I think turning your internal mechanism, whatever you want to call it, into a creative force of some kind, you become less angry because or less sort of you're too busy working on what it is that you're passionate about doing. And ultimately that sort of mitigates this sort of loop you can get stuck in, especially online and dealing with all the vitriol that's out there. And I think that, that's the way sort of I would advise people. It's like, look, man, if you're angry about all these things, if you're angry about Star Wars, if you're angry about Star Trek or whatever it is you're angry about, sort of take that anger and maybe use it to fuel your own creative endeavors. Because there's nothing better than I like nothing better than to bask in other people's creativity. Now, not everybody's creativity is worth basking in. I'll say that right away. I mean, there are people that are much more talented than others, but I think by endeavoring, like John Campion made a movie, and he flat out will tell me making movies was not really, he wants to try doing something in the future, but it wasn't something that was necessarily the most enjoyable thing for him to do, but he wanted to do it to understand the process. And I admire him for that. I thought that was a really great thing to do. And I think it's only beneficial when you try and make something, no matter what it is, whether you're building a model or building a Lego set or doing something, it changes your perspective. You get to think of things in a different way. And I think it's important. So I know we've got this weird fan community, and what I've not understood is my fan community that I was growing up in was always, we didn't have the vitriol and the hate. There was always the dissension. There was always the disagreements. I mean, I had some epic Star Trek disagreements, but the difference was we all knew that we loved Star Trek. So the understanding that we're all coming from the same place, the same baseline, which is a love of genre material, kept things from getting too acrimonious. It's only, I would say, in the last 10 years. And again, I blame the internet. When you can go on the internet and not be face to face with somebody and you can post whatever you want, you forget that other real human flesh and blood people are on the other end of whatever it is you're writing about. And the cost to the cost of other people should be something that I think people should be mindful of. Factual opinion. I already read that. Your factual opinion. David Tapia says, wow, re-release of Spirited Away beat Toy Story 4 in China. Well, it just goes to show you we're so used to American media dominating everything. And we live in a global world now. And that's to be expected. I mean, Spirited Away is a masterpiece. And remember, there's generations of people, young people, that haven't seen Spirited Away. So I think that makes sense to me. JB Bonifacio says, thoughts on your Eva rewatch so far? That means Neon Genesis Evangelion. Well, it's funny. I'm always surprised when I watch Evangelion how it has such sort of, I mean, the humor is pretty obvious and sort of over the top sometimes. And then the story that's actually happening is it has this metaphysical bent to it. It's very sort of strange, the things that are going on. I love Evangelion. If you guys haven't watched Neon Genesis Evangelion, it's one of the great, it is one of the great animes of all time. Certainly one of the greatest giant robot shows of all time. And it really gets really interesting. And I highly recommend anybody checking it out, even though there's a different dub. I mean, watch the original Japanese version of it if you can. But if you can't, the English dub is there, and it's for anybody that wants to watch it. But I do recommend watching Evangelion because it's really, really, really interesting. Factual Opinion says, in TNG, it was fun to watch the Data actor in Data lore. Yes, Data Lore. That's the episode from the first season that introduces Data's evil brother Lore, which was definitely an interesting character. And Lore, of course, goes on throughout. There's the episode Brothers, and then of course we see Lore come back ruling a splinter faction of the Borg in Descent episodes 1 and 2. So yeah, he does a great job playing Lore. I loved watching him play Lore. I thought it was great. Willow Yang is here. Willow Yang says, I thought the reveal in Us was ridiculous. Did you hate the entire movie, though, or was it mostly the ending that ruined it for you? You know what? I really didn't like most of the movie. I liked the first 20 minutes. I thought it was really intriguing, but I didn't think it was particularly... I really enjoyed Get Out a great deal. I really did, but I thought everything about Us felt sort of strange and stilted and weird, and it didn't really work. I didn't think it worked. And then the reveal, like, what reveal? Like, you're asking me to buy in. Oh, look, I'll buy into some crazy shit. I'll watch crazy stuff, but the reveal in Us was like so unbelievable. And look, like I said before, I'll believe in flying silver balls that pump the blood out of your brain. I'll believe in psycho killers that are unkillable. I'll believe in Cenobites that come from the depths of hell to tear your soul apart. I'll believe in all of that, but the reveal in Us was nonsense. It was nonsensical. It was bizarre. I mean, the movie opens talking about how there's tunnels underneath the United States, and then you're supposed to believe some organization. I mean, did they say who? An organization is what cloned if you haven't seen Us, spoiler alert, some organization has somehow cloned every human being in the United States, or presumably the world, and they have some kind of a connection to the people they've been cloned from, and those clones know they're clones, and they're going to take it. What? It was nuts. I hated everything about it. And it really bothered me. What bothered me about it was I take no pleasure in disliking something, and especially because I'm a fan of Jordan Peele. I loved Key and Peele. I really did like Get Out, and when I watched this, I'm like, what is this? I really was. I mean, maybe I need to read some kind of analysis about what the movie was trying to say with the hands across America. I mean, I get it. I understand. I just don't think it worked at all. Look, when you are creating a fantasy film, a fantasy franchise, if you're going to tell a horror, science fiction, or fantasy story, it's up to you to set up a believable world. And I was watching Us. I was with Us. The premise with this duplicate family. Who are they? Where do they come from? Well, it didn't convince me. It was horrific, terrifying, awful in its inception. I just didn't like it at all. Suthia says, hey, Mr. B, I like Star Trek and I cannot lie. I like Star Trek and I cannot lie. You other Trekkies can't deny. When Discovery walks in with an itty-bitty waist and a round thing in your face, you get sprung. I don't know if I get sprung. I don't think Discovery has ever sprung me. Not like Mix-a-Lot song did, if you know what I'm saying. But that was funny that you just gave us a Filk song. That was a Filk song, a Discovery Filk song. So kudos to you, sir, for using Mix-a-Lot as the basis for your Discovery Filk song. Murray Reich asks, have you seen Toy Story 4 or Dark Phoenix? I have not, because I've been working on Tango Shalom in my spare time. So I have not done that, unfortunately, but I'm going to catch up this week. I got so many movies that I haven't seen that I plan on catching up with. I've just been a little busy, even working on the DCP for Skyfighter. I had to take care of that. Sub McShave says, whenever I get frustrated, I try to channel that into creativity by working on the book I'm trying to put together. Well, there you go. I think it's fantastic. What's so interesting today is that there's so much, the internet, I mean, even these chats, we have so much ability to get our material out to the whole world, which has never existed before. I mean, it's incredible, the technology, but I can't expect a lot of people aren't creative souls. So you can't just expect everybody to be creative. And if you're not creative, getting input from people, whether it's positive or negative, sometimes input itself is enough. And it's great to know if you're lonely or you don't have a lot of friends, or you can get on the internet and there's like-minded people, there's communities all over the internet that you can join immediately and start getting that positive feedback. But really, when you turn your computer off, that's when the rubber hits the road. That's when things really matter. And I think one of the things that is gratifying about being a creative person is there's always something to be doing. You know, you're never really bored. And I think that's kind of a good thing. This next one comes all the way from Japan. This is from Lynn Hobday. And Lynn works on music. I guess she's a producer, a writer, a musician, singer, and she lives in Japan. She even worked, or she knows the people that worked on Godzilla Final Wars, which is amazing. So Lynn writes, also a member of the Post-Geek Singularity community. She writes, "Dear Rob, hope you're well. I got somewhat behind in listening to your amazing YouTube videos. Life got kind of crazy. So I'm at home today working and binge viewing and listening. I finally listened to your program of June 5th today. I'm over the moon that you took the time to read my letter. In fact, I must admit I was a little embarrassed about sending a letter in. As I work in the entertainment industry over here, I tend to listen from an industry point of view as well. And when I comment on something, I may name drop something that I've done, which is quite natural, but I don't like to sound as if I'm bragging. Hey, man, if you've worked on something, I don't think it's just the way you say it. If you say it like, you know, I worked on blah, 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 and then you stand back and wait for the accolades to come. But if you just say, look, you know, I worked with the woman who engineered Keith Emerson's score for Godzilla Final Wars, that leaves me room to go, really? You worked on Godzilla Final Wars? That's dope. So, you know, it's different. Depends how you do it. I comment on something, a name drop that's something I've done, which is quite natural, but I don't like to sound as if I'm bragging. Sometimes I find the disparity, sometimes I find the disparity between being an introvert, which many creators, actors, and writers are, and having to be an extrovert in order to get things done or getting my name out there, quite difficult to navigate. Now that you have read a letter, it has given me the confidence to write a little more regularly. Please feel free to edit, by the way. I love that you feel that way. I would love to be a contact for you here in Japan. And if you ever come over, I would be more than delighted to translate and network for you. Just drop me a line if you need any information or help in getting Japanese memorabilia. Oh, Lynn. That's them's fighting words. I still haven't got to see Godzilla yet, but I will very soon. By the way, it was the director of Final Wars that wanted to use Keith Emerson. Amazing. I'm a longtime female geek, an only child brought up in a nice English town, and spent most of my childhood reading, mainly science fiction, fantasy, and horror, going for long walks, writing, singing, performing in plays, both at school and in the community, going to movies and watching Star Trek. Yes, Star Trek. After all, that's what brought me to your channel in the first place. I can't recall when I first stumbled onto the original series of Star Trek. I guess Gilbert really likes your letter. But I do remember pestering my parents to buy a video deck so that I could record episodes. One view simply wasn't enough. My long-suffering parents ended up renting me a video deck. I really couldn't get enough of the original series. In fact, back in the day, before the internet, I discovered there were fan clubs, many of which produced fanzines. I even submitted some fan fiction. One was a sequel to City on the Edge of Forever, The Gall, and another was about a vampire on the loose on the Enterprise with a guest character called Riker with a Y. Foresight? Actually, I would love to see. It sounds a little Buck Rogers in the 25th century, but I wouldn't mind seeing a vampire on board the Enterprise. As a matter of fact, in this book I talk about a lot, Peter Watts' science fiction 2006 Hugo nominee Blind Sight. They have a very interesting sci-fi twist on vampires. Anyway, when I was posted to Japan in the early 90s, my mother continued to send me Star Trek The Next Generation videos she recorded off the telly. At the time, Japan was way behind, and once again, I still couldn't get enough Star Trek. Still in my 20s, I should have been out partying, but I preferred to stay home with two generations of Enterprise crew. Although I love living in Japan, The Next Generation has helped me through many difficult times. If the iconic Borg two-parter, The Best of Both Worlds, kept me on the edge of my sofa, one of my favorite episodes is the one that follows, Family, a very underrated episode. It did, I don't know if it's underrated. They're basing the whole new Picard series promo teaser on that. It did something that at the time, very few series on TV did. It followed up on the post-traumatic trauma of Captain Picard being taken over by the Borg. Picard was a bastion of strength. People looked up to him. I looked up to him. To see him go back to his parental home, a French vineyard run by his older brother Robert, and pick up his relationship with his family was very moving and also extremely real. Whenever I go back to the UK, I always return to my family home. Things in life may change, but the bedroom where I grew up stays the same. There's kind of a permanence to it, like a personal museum. I can press the reset button. Working as a freelancer in a major Asian city is exciting, but it's a constant fight. It is my battleground. I have made many decisions in my life that I regret, but sometimes I think we can all be a bit hard on ourselves. One of my favorite scenes in all of Star Trek comes from family. It is when Picard and his older brother fight in the mud, venting years of unresolved sibling rivalry. They start to laugh, realizing the ridiculous situation of two middle-aged brothers scrapping. Then Robert, Jean-Luc's brother, tells him, "You have been terribly hard on yourself." Jean-Luc breaks down in tears and lets his guard down. We now find out how deeply Jean-Luc has been affected by being taken over by the hostile Borg. "I tried to stop them. I tried so hard. I wasn't strong enough. I wasn't good enough. I should have been able to stop them." It makes me cry every time I hear this line. Even a strong leader like Picard is human. He is relatable. He has to live with this regret, although in this case, in no way is Picard at fault. Robert's consequent advice is equally touching. This episode is so layered, the conflict between tradition and technological progress, unresolved grudges, the possibility of Picard leaving behind a life in the stars for a job on Earth. Yes, I had to go and watch the whole episode. That a science fiction series could ring so true is a testament to the excellent writing that is present in The Next Generation. As you so often say, it's all about verisimilitude. Living away from your roots for so long does affect people in particular ways. The showrunners gave both the characters and the audience time to breathe after two very intense and action-filled episodes. Next Generation is like, quote, home for the soul. Whenever I feel I've lost the plot, it is both comforting and challenging at the same time. I was going to write something else, but this is where I ended up, talking about one of the most personal episodes of Star Trek. Don't even get me started on how upset I felt about the first Next Generation film. Although I can enjoy it superficially, Generations does make me very, very angry. All in, it made me very angry too. I saw it on the Paramount lot for the first time. I saw it with Mark Altman, and Mark Altman was about to he was turning purple. He was so mad, and he was screaming and yelling and ranting and raving. I'm like, dude, we're on the studio lot. We got to get out of here before we offend somebody. But by the way, if you guys don't know Red Letter Media, and yeah, everyone should know Red Letter Media. I first encountered Red Letter Media maybe a decade ago, and of course, Mr. Plinkett, the character of Mr. Plinkett. The first time I met Plinkett was with his Generations review. And if you want a hilarious time on the internet for 30 minutes, please go over to Red Letter Media's channel and find Plinkett's review of Star Trek Generations. Man, I love what they do over there. Better sign off now, but I certainly hope the lovely Willow Yang will take a foray into the world of the Next Generation. And if the new Picard show does a Logan on Jean-Luc, I will again be very, very angry. But let me get back to work and catching up on all your videos. All the best, Lynn Hobday. I think I'm saying your last name right, Lynn. Well, what a lovely letter this is. I mean, again, somebody who's a British citizen who's living in Japan, who has just offered to pretty much get me a line on any Japanese collectible I need. Well, Lynn, I've got one for you. Here's what I want, Lynn. This is what I want. I'm going to tell you this right now, and let me get it right, because it's sold out everywhere in the United States. I can't get one over here, all of my places. This is what I want. Okay, this is what I want, Lynn. And look, I'll pay you for it. it's what I want. There's one thing. I'm trying to find the right. Okay, here it is. It doesn't come out until December. Okay, and this is a two-part thing that I want. If you can help me get this, it's Bandai's new. Meaning new. It's a new line of Bandai Gundam toys, and it is the Gundam. Let me get this right. It's the Metal Structure RX-93, of course, one of my favorite Gundams. The Metal Structure RX-93 new Gundam from Char's Counterattack. Now, all the pre-orders are closed. I can only get it in Japan somewhere. And then the Tamashii Nations are going to have the funnels, the fins that you need to go with it. And it's 1/60 scale, and I want it. So if you can hook me up, find somebody in Japan that can get me this thing, because it's already gone. And it's, you know, if you get the Tamashii Nations thing, it's over $1,000. But anyway, that's what I want, Lynn. Help a brother out. But anyway, I think I really like, first of all, hearing from Lynn, and of course, hearing anybody's experience with Star Trek. And I think, look, everybody who's a member of the Post-Geek Singularity, all of you imagination connoisseurs, became that way for the same reason that Lynn did. For whatever reason, you're open to flights of fancy, you're open to the imagination, you're open to science fiction, fantasy, and horror. The iconography attracts you, the messages conveyed attract you. And I think that what's really interesting is when you're watching Star Trek, all of those messages and all of the optimism the characters bring are all heightened. And there's something about it that becomes very attractive if you're open to those things. And I think that's why I've loved Star Trek since I was a kid. And most, you know, even when I watch something like The Expanse, I find the characters optimistic and hopeful, because they're very different people that have come together to do great things. And I think that's pretty awesome. I mean, look at, ultimately, whether you're talking about the Fellowship of the Ring, or you're talking about the crew of the Enterprise, or the crew of Voyager, or the crew of wherever, of Deep Space Nine, the crew of Babylon 5, there's something inherently optimistic and hopeful, even in the bleakest of sci-fi, even in the bleakest of horror. I've often said to people that I think horror is an uplifting genre, because it's human beings, when faced with death and the worst possible outcomes, they somehow manage to retain their humanity. And, you know, Laurie Strode will triumph over the Shape, will triumph over Michael Myers. And I think there's something inherently uplifting about that. And I find that to be true of most genre fiction. And it's great hearing from Lynn all the way across. You know, my dream is to go to Japan. I've wanted to go to Japan my whole life. I've never gone. I was going to go in 2010 when the live action space battleship Yamato opened. I really was. I was very close to going, because I wanted to go see it in a Japanese theater. Unfortunately, the movie, I do own a special edition Blu-ray of it, and the movie was quite disappointing. There's a lot I do like about it, but ultimately it is somewhat disappointing. And yeah, it kind of bummed me out. Now, along with Willow Yang, another prolific letter writer who's our resident comic, Paul in Long Beach, has written me. And if you know, I love Paul in Long Beach's letters. They're quite funny. And this one is no exception. So, Paul, this one, it comes from Paul from Long Beach. Morning, Rob. Catching up on my Sunday LA Times yesterday, I saw that the Academy is showing an original 70 millimeter print of the original version of Star Wars with a double feature of Rogue One. Damn, dude, looks like I'm headed to Beverly Hills on Saturday. Well, Paul, so am I. So if you see me, please stop and introduce yourself. I'd love to meet you in person. For those of you who don't know, the original version of Star Wars, the one that's called Star Wars, it might be a re-release print that says A New Hope on it, but the original version of Star Wars in 70 millimeter with 70 millimeter sound mix is very rarely seen. And Marsha Lucas is going to be speaking, and it's being shown at the Samuel Goldwyn Academy of Motion Picture Arts and Sciences movie theater, which is one of the greatest movie theaters on the planet Earth. It's amazing. They're screening the original Star Wars and Rogue One on Saturday. Spectacular. So, morning, Rob. Catching up on my Sunday LA Times yesterday, I saw the Academy showing an original 70 millimeter print of Star Wars with a double feature of Rogue One. Damn, dude, looks like I'm heading to Beverly Hills on Saturday. Secondly, not sure if you've heard, but Kevin Smith and Mark Bernardin have announced they've signed on the dotted line and have a show beginning production. I have no inside information, but I have a prediction. Paul, personal and confidential to you, I checked on your prediction and you are incorrect. So I'm not going to read it aloud. Now, I'd like to personally apologize to Mr. Mark C. Not for anything I wrote. I stand by everything I said, especially when confronted with tinfoil hat conspiracy theories. No, I'm apologizing on behalf of the chat room. I start work at 4 a.m. Therefore, I don't watch the show live. When I do watch, usually it's 7 or 8-ish, I like to read the chats. The names you were called in the chat on Saturday were absolutely uncalled for and a personal embarrassment to me. So let me say this to my fellow imagination connoisseurs, stop it. If I had been in the chat, I would have borrowed Detective Jim's wrench and been on Mark's side with it firmly in hand. Same goes for those whom agree with Mark. When you're using Rob's chat to attack Rob's audience, the only person you're being disrespectful to is Rob. Was I smarmy? Absolutely. Star Wars isn't emasculating you or me. Please trust me on this. I've been married for almost 18 years. I have a wife for that. Rim shot. But I'm bummed. So let's get back to the subject we can all publicly agree upon. Robert Meyer Burnett should be publicly flogged for defending Disco Star Wars. That would be Miko Star Wars, Paul, and I defend it to the death. Rob, please look in the camera and tell me you weren't doing the C-3PO dance in 1977 to the Imperial Attack disco version. That's just wrong, dude. Terry, start a poll. Cheers, everyone, especially Mark C. Paul. Well, no. You know, I was not dancing the C-3PO to the disco attack theme. I was, however, I knew all of the Born to Hand Jive moves from Grease, which came out the following year. I will cop to that. I used to dance for my sister in my bedroom. She'd come into my bedroom and we'd do the Grease thing, but she wouldn't dance. But I'd be like, how's my hand jive? Is it better than it was the last time you saw it? So yes, in 1978, I was doing Born to Hand Jive off the Grease soundtrack because I worshipped it. So there you go, Paul. I want to thank you for your letter. And I don't know. I don't see Mark C here. Mark C might be here, but I don't know if he is. But it was nice. You know what? Again, this is what I love to see. I love to see that Paul stood up for Mark C. I didn't realize that a lot of people were jumping down Mark C's throat. I mean, the whole point, you guys, is to be able to come here and discuss these things openly and honestly. And you know, you gotta be nice. Team Nerd is here. Team Nerd says, will you see Endgame again with the re-release? I do want to see Endgame with the re-release. I want to see what they're adding. I suspect certain things, and I want to see them. Suthia says, Mr. B, I think you missed 2 of my super chats. Actually, no. Oh, you mean after? Yes, I have not read those yet because I just hadn't. Emil Johnson sent me a super chat, which I thank you, Emil. But there's no question. Suthia says also, you can calculate how much you're worth every second of every minute of every hour if you're an exotic dancer. Just saying. Yes, Suthius, I think you can. Suthius also says, I don't have much faith in humanity. Why? Because we can't even grab drinks from the soda fountain at Wawa without making a mess of the cups and lids. What's Wawa? It must be. I don't know what Wawa is, but I know what you mean. Look, I don't even understand. I don't understand why it's so difficult to be able to take cups and lids like that. It drives me crazy. I hate when I see that in our local movie theaters, the ArcLight. Like, people make a mess of these things. I don't get it. So there you go, Suthius. TV Operations asks, this is a tough question. What is worse, Star Trek 3 or Generations? I think Generations is far worse than Star Trek 3 because, like the movie Us, first of all, the central conceit of Generations, that there is a spacefaring energy ribbon that is somehow the entryway to a dimension that knows your thoughts. So the spacefaring energy anomaly, I'll buy off on that. There's lots of spacefaring energy anomalies that are traveling the universe. But for a spacefaring energy anomaly to be the doorway into the Nexus, a dimension that somehow reads your mind and creates a reality for you that's where you really want. I mean, I just don't buy that. You've now strained my credulity to the breaking point, and I can't buy into that. You know, in a science fiction movie, you usually get one preposterous thing that you have to make me believe. I didn't believe that. and I also didn't believe that Captain Kirk's fantasy is to be living in a log cabin with a woman named Antonia with his dog Butler chopping wood. It didn't make any sense. None of that made any sense to me. And so I thought Kirk was out of character. I thought the demise of Kirk was ridiculous. I thought it was terrible. There are lots of things in Generations that, by the way, if you watch the Red Letter Media review of Generations, they'll point these things out to you. Like, I'll give you an example. A chemically controlled rocket that we see Soren fire into the sun apparently travels from the surface of a planet to the impact of a sun in literally seconds. Now, even as somebody, I'm willing to buy anything, but you can't launch. You know how long it would take that rocket to actually get to the sun? Even with warp drive, the speed of light, doesn't light take, I don't know exactly how, wait, let me check this out. Let me just see. How long, let's find out. How long does it take sunlight to reach the Earth? Because I don't know. I want to find out. Universe Today. Let's see what it says. Oh, there's a whole, this is some video I have to watch. I just want to know the answer. 8 minutes. I thought it was 8 minutes. That's what I heard. The speed of light, 186,000 miles per second. It takes the speed of light 8 minutes to reach the Earth from the sun. So, on the surface of Viridian 3, how long does it take a chemically launched rocket? It didn't look like that rocket was big enough for a warp drive unit, so it's certainly not traveling the speed of light. And yet in Generations, they fire it, and it just hits the sun within seconds. I can't go that way. I watch stuff like that, and Star Trek 09 was full of stuff like that. I know it seems like, come on, Rob, you have to suspend your disbelief. Look, I couldn't suspend my disbelief with the Nexus ribbon. I'm certainly not going to believe that a chemically powered rocket launched from the surface of a planet is going to reach a sun and blow it up in seconds. Come on. Now, no, I think Star Trek 3 is a far more enjoyable film. Is Generations maybe slicker and better directed and better lit? Sure. Certainly doesn't have a better soundtrack, though. I think that Generations is far worse than Star Trek 3, especially because what it does to James T. Kirk, which is unfortunate. Stubble McShave says, would you like to see the suggested 8th season of Deep Space Nine? Yeah. For those of you who don't know what Stubble is saying, What We Left Behind, the Deep Space Nine documentary that comes out in August on Blu-ray from Shout Factory, that Ira Stephen Bear made. It's a wonderful documentary. I saw it. And they have the writers' room breaking a season 8 for Next Generation. I would love to see a season 8. I mean, look, I wrote an article in Sci-Fi Universe magazine almost 25 years ago about how they should make a Deep Space Nine series of movies and treat them like the indie film series of Star Trek, which they really could do. And I think that would be really, really interesting. I'm a huge Deep Space Nine fan. I'd love to see that. They've done a wonderful job. The books have done a wonderful job of creating a post Deep Space Nine series. It's all part of the post Dominion War, and they've done a really, really good job of it. I really like what they did. I even love the Deep Space Nine station was destroyed in the books and rebuilt, and I love the redesign of Deep Space Nine. It's really good. So yeah, I'm in, man. I'm into the whole Deep Space Nine thing for sure. TV Operations is back and asks, okay, Generations or Nemesis? You're making it tough. There's a lot of really interesting stuff in Nemesis that I actually kind of enjoy, but the central conceit, and John Logan, who wrote Gladiator, wrote Nemesis, but there's so many off-roading, the whole idea of a clone. I hated the Remans. I mean, all of that stuff, none of it made any sense. And I don't understand why people that make science fiction movies have such a lack of understanding of what cloning is. Look, when you're cloned, yes, you're an exact duplicate of the original person's DNA, but that doesn't mean your mind is the same. You're a blank slate. You have to fill your mind up. Your personality will come from somewhere else. You're going to be nothing like, you might look the same, but even that's not going to be the case. You'll look similar, but your body weight won't be the same. You'll have different scars on you. And this idea, the whole idea of the Shinzon clone, as much as I like Tom Hardy's performance, I thought the whole movie was ludicrous. You know, it was just dumb. Once again, we have another space battle. It wasn't that interesting. I did like seeing the Romulan Senate, but as I've talked about before, I didn't like the way the people looked. I didn't buy the Romulans. But Nemesis, or yeah, you know what? I hate Nemesis. I hate them both. I probably watched Generations again just to see Shatner, though, because I mean, I love Shatner. I'll always watch Shatner in something, even if I hate the movie. So I'll take Genesis. I mean, I'll take Generations over Nemesis. Genesis, I guess, would be the combination of the two. But that's tough. You're pinning me to the wall, TV operations. Suthius is back again. Have you seen the video of a young woman getting pushed against a barricade as grown-ass men try and get Tom Holland's autograph? Sad he went off on them. Yeah, you know what? We live in a weird time now. You should never get an autograph at the expense of another human being. All I'm saying. That's just bad. Not cool. Not a good look. I haven't seen the video, but I'm already depressed about it. Already depressed. Because that's kind of needless. It's just, why bother? Anyway, I have to say that I'm going to bring this chat to a conclusion, but I want to remind everybody, just if you didn't hear it at the top, that people have asked me about the new mini chats, not mini chats, but I'm going to do single, kind of like the Mickey Mouse Club. Every day of the week is going to be a different day, a different thing, but it's going to be the same thing every week. So I'll be doing like fully articulated on Tuesday because new stuff comes out on Tuesday, or maybe I'll make that home video day, physical media day. And then Friday is going to be viewer's choice. And if you're a supporter of the Burnettwork, by the way, you can support the Post-Geek Singularity on the Burnettwork for $1 a year if you want. But if you support at basically $1 a month, so it would be actually it's $3 a month. So quarterly it's $9 at that level and above. So everybody that supports above that is also part of this. You can send in your discussion topic, and please send in why do you want me to discuss it and what do you think. And I'm going to do every Friday, I'm going to start doing shows that are a viewer's choice show. And it's only going to be that. I'm only going to talk about that one specific thing. Sometimes I'm going to make video packages for these things, and we'll drill down into a subject that comes from you guys. So it's not necessarily, you don't have to write me a letter, but if you pick a topic, and even if you just give me bullet points about what you think about this topic, and also if you want to participate in that way, tell me if I can have you on live. Like if we can have this discussion live, what I'm going to need from you, if you want to do that, whether you want to call in via Skype or if you have a webcam or something, through Wirecast, I can get you through their Rendezvous part of their app, and we'll have a live discussion with everybody else and drill down on this topic together. So that's kind of what I want to do. I want to make it more participatory for you imagination connoisseurs, you members of the Post-Geek Singularity community, if you want to do that. And by the way, don't feel any pressure. If you don't want to appear on camera, that doesn't mean you can't send me a topic. That's fine. I just think appearing on camera, that's just an extra added bonus. I mean, there's people that I really would love to all of you. I'm sure all of you are delightful, and it'd be great to meet all of you face to face, because I don't have a sense of what you look like. I mean, Willow Yang has painted a portrait of herself. I think Willow Yang's probably a lot cuter than she wants to let on, but she just doesn't know that. But it'd be nice to meet her. It'd be nice to talk to Vesna and Sarajevo, or Joseph, or maybe if Joseph and Vesna could get together and I could talk to two people at the same time from the Balkans. That would be cool too. I think it'd be really interesting, and I think it would just further the community here. Now, that I don't want anyone to freak out. If you don't want to do that, you don't have to do that. I'm just saying, for the people that are supporting this channel, it's going to be a lot more fun. We're going to step it up and give you something for your dollars, and really, really crank up, as Spinal Tap would say, we're going to crank up the Burnettwork to 11. So that's at the burnettwork.net website. You can sign up there. I'm deplatforming myself off Patreon. So I really want to thank everybody who's been a Patreon supporter, but I'm slowly trying to deplatform myself off Patreon and go to my own website so I can keep everything in one place. So thank you for that. And remember, these chats are brought to you by Lucky Tiger, for those men who want to look good and feel great. you can go to their website at getluckytiger.com. And if you punch in PGS for Post-Geek Singularity, you get 20% off. And by the way, today on the website, I'm finally going to put up my interview with Alan Murphy, the CEO of Lucky Tiger. I cut it together. He talks about the Post-Geek Singularity. I mean, some of you are going to accuse me of making it an infomercial, but remember, you helped me seek this out. You guys wrote to Alan Murphy. I finally did. I got it done a while ago, but I haven't been able to post it until now. I'm going to post it today. It's just going to be, I think I'll call it Robservations special or something, but it's about a half an hour chat with the CEO of Lucky Tiger men's grooming products that I thought was delightful. So I'm going to put that up as a special thing. Look for that. If you're a subscriber, please subscribe and please like, if you like these chats, like them. Those help with my YouTube analytics, and you can watch that because you'll finally get to meet him. And he's a pretty swell guy. So that's going to go up later today. And as I bring this chat to an end, I want to say, remember, every person you meet has a story to tell you have yet to hear. So all you have to do is listen. And with that, I'm going to bring this chat to an end. I want to thank everybody for supporting the channel. Alexander Wilson just suggested a topic: how streaming changed Hollywood. That's a whole show. Wow, that's a good one. I like that. That would require some good research. I'd love to get some numbers for that. Good one, Alexander Wilson. I appreciate that. But yeah, so I want to thank all the moderators: Mike Bodden, Terry from the UK, Detective Jim, and also Greg Smith. You guys do a great job. And I just love, the Honorable Mayor Mike Bodden of Riverdale, Iowa. It's true. Your moderators, two of your moderators, one is a former police detective. The other is the mayor, the current mayor of Riverdale, Iowa, population like 450. But that doesn't matter. He's still a mayor. He was still elected. Of course, he ran unchallenged, but that doesn't matter either. He's still an actual mayor, and Detective Jim is actually a former police detective. He knows, he's like Santa Claus. He knows what you've been doing. He knows if you've been good or bad. So be good, for goodness sake, for them. On that, I will bring this to an end. Thank you all for being here. Thanks for supporting the channel. Thanks for making this a fun place and being be nice to everyone. You know, it's not like the Jerry Springer thing, but I like what Will Wheaton says. Don't be a dick. Of course, now someone will say that's sexist, which probably is true. But anyway, I want to thank you. I will be back tomorrow on the John Campea Show at 9 a.m. and I will be back here in the afternoon. So, as always, have a better day.